Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. The Bible tells one big story of redemption, and we want to spend 5 minutes every day journeying through the Bible from start to finish and exploring how all of it points to Jesus.
Hey everyone, welcome back to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Jenny, and today we are talking about the book of Esther and the first 3 chapters. First, let's get into a little background to this book. The events detailed in Esther occur sometime between the Jewish exiles' return home and the events detailed in Ezra and Nehemiah. The main theme of Esther is God's providence and how he delivers his people from evil. As for the events of the story, you likely already know a little bit about Esther. The Sunday school version is that Esther was a Jewish woman who auditioned to become the queen of Persia, and after a year of beauty treatments, was so beautiful that the king decided to make her his queen, which allowed her to save her people from destruction. However, the story we find in the Bible is much more exciting and drips with evidence of God's providence. It is a story that involves a dethroned queen, power-hungry king, an assassination attempt, and a harem. But all of these events are under the umbrella of God's providence and how he seeks to redeem all situations to save his people and glorify himself. So now that you have a little bit of an understanding of the book of Esther, let's dive into today's chapters. The book of Esther kicks off with a series of feasts that occur during the 3rd year of King Ahasuerus' reign. During one of the feasts, the king commands Queen Vashti to parade in front of him and his men in her royal crown. Most scholars interpret this to mean that she was to come out in only her crown. Understandably, she refused his request, and it is this refusal that sets the whole plot of the book in motion. Seemingly embarrassed by the queen's refusal, the king accepts the advice of one of the princes attending the feast to remove Vashti from power. Thus he begins his search for a new queen. As part of this search, the king sent letters to all of the Persian provinces requesting that all the young, beautiful virgins be gathered and placed in a harem. Once there, the women would be beautified with myrrh oil and spices for a year. Then, one by one, they would go before the king to satisfy his desires. Once spending one night with the king, they would be taken to a second harem and would not be brought back to the king again unless he delighted in her. Well, Esther happened to be one of the women sent to live in the harem, all while concealing her identity as a Jew. The king delighted in Esther and he made her his queen. This is incredible, but we soon find that God made her queen to preserve his people and ultimately bring about the one who saves all. The next part of the story begins with an assassination attempt. A man named Mordecai, who was Esther's cousin and the one who had raised her, was near the king's gate when he learned that 2 of the king's guards were planning to murder the king. Mordecai let Esther know, and she told the king what Mordecai knew. The king investigated the matter and found it to be true. As a result, he hanged the men, and the king's life was spared. Next, we are introduced to Haman. Haman is a man that the king promoted to the highest royal position in the Persian Empire. As a result, the king commanded that everyone at the king's gate bow down to Haman. However, Mordecai refused to do so. This enraged Haman, and once Haman learned that Mordecai was a Jew, he plotted to murder all of the Jews. Chapter 3 closes with Haman convincing the king of his plot, and the king decreeing that all Jews be killed. Though you will have to come back tomorrow to see how God's providence is fully evident in this story, I can tell you that this story already points to the need for a better king. And we have that king in Jesus, who is not selfish, like the kings described here, but instead lays down his life to redeem and restore his people. Thanks so much for joining me today. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at The Daily Grace Podcast and at The Daily Grace Co. And check out our website, thedailygraceco.com, for all kinds of resources to help you dive deeper into God's Word. Finally, you can always find resources to accompany the podcast at dailygracepodcast.com. Thanks again, and remember to tune in tomorrow to hear how this story unfolds.